Good morning, all. My name is Tamara Lucas. I'm the product specialist for water purification here at LASEC. You're not going to be hearing very much from myself today. We are joined by John Jerger, who is the area specialist for Africa at Avidity Science. So they are our brand that we supply for water purification systems. Without further ado, John, you can begin.
Great, thanks, Cameron, and thanks for allowing me the opportunity to present here today. So the title is pretty self-explanatory. I'll just cover what I want to accomplish in the 20 minutes or so we have together. First, I'll just do a quick introduction about myself and Avidity Science as a company. I want to just lightly touch on the various standards of purified water and what quality to use for various applications, because that actually does end up having some impact on sustainability. I'll go through the purification technologies that are involved in delivering the water and the impact that those could have on sustainability. We'll talk about some of the features in modern water systems that can improve sustainability, and also some of the things that yourselves as users of purified water, steps you can take to help improve the performance of the units, reduce running costs, and improve sustainability. So those are the goals that we're going to try to cover in the 20 so minutes we have together today. So just a quick introduction. My name is John Jerger, as Tamara has previously mentioned. My current role is Business Development Manager in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and our company delivers pure water solutions, and we use distribution partners such as LASEC to help us do that, to deliver solutions to our customers. Avidity Science, as an overall company, in the UK, where the units are manufactured, we'll talk about today. We started in 2001. In the life science industry, we have over 25 years experience as the specific company, although most of our engineers and stuff like myself, who also have 25 years experience, have been in the industry longer than that. This is just mainly my experience with Avidity, but I've been a field engineer, a project engineer, direct sales representative, and also I've worked on large projects, which are big building installations and so on. So I've been with Avidity since pretty much it started. I've previously worked in water, and I've held pretty much every role you could have in delivering solutions for our customers. As a life science company, in our life science business, we do have global offices. So our main production area is in Thame in the UK. We have offices in Europe. Our animal watering systems are manufactured in the US. We have offices in China and in Japan also. And that gives us a good position for Asia. And of course, from Europe, we cover the African continent. We are a company that takes what we do seriously. We realize that the products that we manufacture and deliver to the scientists are important in improving lives of people globally, really, and water is a key element in all of that. This is just a really overview of what a small benchtop systems would look like. Many of you would have seen products similar to this. Pretty much anyone that needs purified water will have a method of generating that, and our systems do the same thing. So these are the units I'm going to specifically focus on today, because they're the ones made in the UK, and I'm going to talk about some of the features and stuff that help sustainability. Water is a very important material in every science, from biopharma, hospitals, academic research, power plants, manufacturing, environmental sciences, forensic sciences, testing labs that you send materials to for testing. They have to have purified water, and even food and beverage are big users of purified water. So it's purified water. It basically touches any science or manufacturing, and so it's a very interesting subject because it has a very broad bandwidth of applications. The water is used in life sciences laboratories are the standards are developed mainly in America and Europe. The original standards that people have used even today are the American Society for Testing and Materials, abbreviated to ASTM. This is a specific standard that talks about the certain qualities of water. And this is where, if you know some of the jargon, because every industry has its own jargon, people will talk about type 1, type 2, and type 3 water. And this is mainly the standard that comes from right here. There is also the international standard, the 3696, and it talks about grade 1 and grade 2. Like I said, I'm just going to lightly touch on that today. I'm not going to go into all the details, but they're broadly aligned. There's some small differences, as always is in standards, but they're broadly aligned to type 1 and grade 1 are very similar. Type 2 and grade 2 are very similar. There's also for the clinical analytical laboratories, there's the Clinical Laboratory Standards Institute that has some specifications for water that feeds into clinical analyzers. And there's several others. There's the Pharmacopoeia specifications, and those govern things like water for injection and purified water for pharmaceutical applications. So those are kind of the main standards. I don't want to belabor those much, but they do have an impact on sustainability. So I'll come to that now, and I'll briefly touch on the specific types of water that are used in laboratories and kind of their applications. So the most basic quality that's specified is reverse osmosis water, or some people refer to it as type 3. This is has the least amount of technology to generate, so it's usually some pre-filtration and reverse osmosis. And this quality of water is used feeding mainly equipment in laboratories like autoclaves or glass washers. It can feed ultra-pure water systems used in steam generators and so on. So this is your most basic quality of water. The next quality of water is type 2, or what sometimes called general laboratory grade water. This is more highly purified than type 3, of course. And this water is used for buffer and media preparation, sample dilution, spectrophotometry, protein electrophoresis, cytology, and it can be used for glassware rinsing and washing to make sure there's no residual materials in the glassware it's being reused. So this is quite a high volume of water used in laboratories. It's not ultra pure, but it's pure enough for these applications. And then we get into the ultra pure quality of water, or type 1. And this is the theoretically pure water, where you only have water atoms in the mix, so you hopefully don't have any of their ions or contamination. And this is used for more demanding applications like molecular biology, critical cell and tissue culture, all the analytical sciences, HPLC, gas chromatography. They will require a certain volume of ultra pure water. DNA sequencing, genomics, proteomics. So these are the broad spectrum of water purities used in labs. And the impact we'll have is that the purer the water gets, the more impact you will have on sustainability. So what we're going to focus on today is making sure you're using the right quality of water for your application, and trying to reduce the impact of always using type 1 water when in fact you could probably use a lesser quality. Water purification is a step-by-step process. There's not one design or engineered solution that does all the work that needs to be done. So you have to basically stack the technology to generate the different levels of purified water. And of course, the more technology you have, integrated into the pure water system, the more impact it has on sustainability. So if we look at the next slide, what you see here is that the basic type is only using a reverse osmosis, but then we have to introduce a deionization, and sometimes that includes filtration, and then we have to introduce UV radiation and ultra microfiltration to get to the final type 2 quality, and further deionization. So you can see we're stacking the technology, we're introducing more steps, and each of those steps will impact sustainability. So what I'll focus on here a little bit is a type 3 water system and how it generates that type 3 water, and some of the impacts and improvements we've made to try to reduce water wastage and improve sustainability. So a product that we have that generates type 3 water is called a Puro. Puro is type 3 water needs to be made fairly quickly, because you might be feeding equipment like glass washers or autoclaves that need a substantial amount of water quickly. So these units do make water like 20, 40, or 80 liters per hour. So they have a good production rate. And that's just to keep up with the equipment in your laboratories that need to have that water. It uses reverse osmosis technology and some pre-filtration. And this is just a very basic flow diagram. This is not a P&ID drawing, so it's not an engineering drawing, so we simplified it, but just to kind of take you through some of the steps that are utilized. And the reason I just want to do this, I just want to make people aware of what's happening inside these boxes, and what we've done to try to make these waste less water and be more sustainable. So you have the building supply water coming in. Now you may have some additional pre-filtration before it even enters into the unit, especially if you have challenging feed water conditions. That's an important step, is to protect the unit, because if we can protect the unit, we will reduce the necessity to change these consumables inside the unit, and that will improve sustainability. So we do recommend quite often in challenging feed water conditions, and we work with LASEC on that, to have some consider pre-filtration before we even start going inside the unit of the water. Some of the things we've done here is where we're checking the quality of the feed water, so that you understand how hard these units are having to work, because the more challenging the feed water, the more contaminated it is, the harder these units have to work to deliver purified water for your lab. You'll have a boosting pump, and you go through it does have a small pre-filter inside the unit, but I said, quite often that needs some help to do its job. And then the main technology in most all modern water purification systems is the reverse osmosis. Reverse osmosis is a really good improvement from the old time stills, electrical stills that boiled the water and then condensed it, or double distillation process, because stills themselves are very energy hungry, because of course you got to put electricity in to boil the water, so they're using a lot of energy, and a lot of water has to go to drain the cooling water to cause the condensation. So reverse osmosis water is a lot more efficient to produce. RO membranes waste less water, and they use much less energy. So this is a DC motor pump, and it literally only uses about 100 watts when it's running. So compared to a still that's 4 kilowatts, we're using a lot less energy going into the unit. So that's one big step that improves sustainability. The other things that we designed into our systems, reverse osmosis does need to flush some water to drain when it's running. And I'll come to that in the next slides. I'll explain what that impact that has. But during the quality cycle, when we're checking the water quality from the RO, it takes a few minutes for the RO to come up to quality. It has to flush and rinse itself out. And the old systems used to just flush that to drain. But what we did is we decided we would recycle that water, so that during the rinsing up process, we're wasting as little water as possible. And then once that quality gets good enough, it allows it to go into the storage reservoir. So the steps we've taken are we increase the recovery of the RO, we waste less water to drain, and I'll explain some of the other things about the actual water flushing to drain and how we've tried to reduce that too, to improve production rates. So just to quickly, people talk about reverse osmosis. I just want to explain this. This is the heart of all modern water purification systems now. And feed water is pushed in through the membranes. Some of it has to flush through to drain, because that has to take the contaminations off the surface of the membranes. Otherwise, they would block instantly, and you would be changing ROs all the time. And then the good quality water filters through to the center, and that's called the permeate. So this is the water you're using in your science. What we're trying to do is, RO is very good at removing most contamination, so it's a very good first step. It's about 98% efficient when it's new, and we want to use that as the primary method to lighten the load on everything else in the system. It's very good at taking out organic and inorganic compounds, bacteria, so it's a very good broad-based removal system. That's the workhorse of most modern water purification. There is one thing that RO is not good at removing, and that is dissolved gases. So if there's things like CO2 in the water, that can go right through the membranes. And it's just the nature of the beast, if you like. What we've done, and this is one thing I wanted to make a point of, is that we designed ours to improve the recovery rate. So if you think about the previous slides, I talked briefly about the amount of water it has to flush to drain. Most modern systems run about 20 to 25% efficient. So that means in order to produce 8 liters of water, you have to flush 40 liters to drain, right? 40 liters of tap water go into the system, 8 liters are produced, and the rest of it flushes to drain. Just to explain that a bit better. So at 20%, so if we can increase that percentage, we can increase or reduce the water wastage or increase the water production, depends on how you want to look at it. Our systems start out at 30% on the lower volume production, they go up to 50% recovery. So that means I just wanted to put it, I didn't want to overstate what we do, but at the lower production unit, we are running at 30% recovery. So for the 40 liters that's going into the unit, we're actually producing 12 liters of water instead of 8. So even a small improvement can have a big impact on reducing water wastage, right? So this is what we're trying to do, a series of small steps to improve the systems all the time and improve sustainability. So that's one key feature we do. The other thing that we can work on is reducing waste from the systems. So systems do have components that do need to be changed oftentimes. And this is an example in these photographs. This white thing here is what they call the reverse osmosis housing, and it actually holds the RO membrane inside of it. And I personally used to work for a company that when the customer needed a new RO membrane, because they do have a finite life, they last about 2 or 3 years, they would send the entire plastic container, housing, and the customer would take it out and throw the housing and everything away, right? That's a lot of plastic going to waste. So we thought, well, why don't we use a removable lid housing, and we could just only change the membranes and we can reuse the housing. So we're reducing the plastic waste from the unit. So that's exactly what we do. That has a great impact because it has a substantial reduction in plastic waste, but also if you're shipping only the RO membrane and not the bit of plastic, you're reducing the shipping weight too. So that also impacts CO2 and so on. So these are little steps that we take to try to improve sustainability. Now I'll go to the higher quality water and talk about some additional technology that has to be added that also affects the sustainability. And that is, we've talked about all of this on the primary step here, but you have to add more technology in to deliver the next grade of water. And that is another additional step of deionization, which is removing the ionic contamination from the water. What's inside those the plastic housings you see, the cartridges that you have to change in water system, or what's called a mixed bed deionization resin. It's a polymer resin, so it's a type of plastic, and they're charged with positive and negative charges to remove things like sodium and calcium and stuff from the water, the remaining ions that make it through the RO process. And they have a finite life and they do need to be changed. There's no way around that. So what we're trying to do is to make those last as long as they can, right? So it's basically swapping hydrogen and hydroxide ions for the cation and anion ionic contamination. So that's what we're doing. What we've done, though, is to make this pack last as long as it can, we do not release any water onto that pack until the quality gets to be at a certain stage, typically less than 30 microsiemens. So I'll go to the next slide here. We only allow the RO water, once it gets to be this quality or better, to start going on to the next stage, the deionization. Why do we do that? Well, the cleaner the water is before it hits the deionization cartridge, the longer the cartridge will last. If we can improve the capacity in the lifetime, that means we're generating less waste. So that's exactly what we try to do. Another thing we did on our systems that they're manufactured in the UK is some manufacturers will flag up to change the cartridge based only on time and not so much on the quality. We only indicate the change when the quality drops below, let's say 10 or 11 megohm. So then that will tell you to change the unit. That means that you're getting the full capacity out of the unit and you're not being changing it because it's flagged up because the time says it's to change. And we did that intentionally. We designed these units to, again, improve sustainability. I'll get into, this is a unit that can deliver the quality we've just talked about, but also the ultra pure. And again, we're talking about this is what these units would look like actually. And typically you'd see these installed in labs for doing 2 jobs. I'll just say we've just talked about everything to the left of the red circle. But as you can see, to deliver type 1 water, we yet have to introduce more technology and more wastage into a system. It's just the way it is. We have to put in UV radiation, and we have to put in further deionization to ensure we deliver that type 1 18.2 megohm water. And we also have final filters at the points of use, again, to make sure that bacteria and endotoxin and RNase and DNase aren't in the water. So as you see, as we make the water purer, we're actually reducing the sustainability of water systems, and that's just the way they have to be engineered. So what I'll talk later is some of the things we can work together to try to reduce using the wrong qualities of water. One thing we have done, and this was a decision we made, we only have one UV in our system that does all the work. It's a dual wavelength lamp that makes 254 and 185 nanometer. The reason you need to have two wavelengths, or the 254 is your bacteria wavelength that denatures the RNase, DNase in the bacteria. It basically stops the bacteria from being able to live. And then your other wavelength, your 185, is the wavelength that interacts with the organic carbons left in the water. And they break them apart. It puts a charge on them and elects the deionization resins. And then this one UV lamp also is used in the process of measuring from the unit the amount of TOC left in the water. So you have a TOC reading on the unit. So we're doing 3 jobs with one lamp. Some companies use multiple lamps to do these jobs, but our decision was we wanted to reduce waste. We designed it and engineered it to do this, to do all the work we needed to do with one lamp. And so this is where you get the reduction for the bacteria and the organic carbons. Some customers are trying to promote LED lamps. They're great new technology. A lot of people talk about them. The problem with LEDs is they can only generate one wavelength of light. So you have to have multiple ones, and those need to be changed just like all the other ones, and they generate more waste. So we've gone with one lamp to do all the jobs. So how can you improve sustainability in your labs every day? Well, what I would think is a very, and I'm not wanting to lecture anyone, is think before you use, right? A lot of people will be tempted to always go to the type 1 water and use it for everything, right? But bear in mind, that has the most technology, has the most impact on sustainability. If you're only doing buffer and media prep, or you're rinsing some glassware, make sure you're using type 2 water. It has less impact on sustainability. And likewise, if you're only feeding equipment, don't necessarily have to feed it with type 2. You could use our reverse osmosis water. It's used very successfully. It's the most efficient way to make some type of purified water, and it has a lower cost to make it also. So this is it. Think before you use, think about your applications, and do you always need to use ultra pure water? What I can say also is that I see a lot of this happening in labs everywhere in the world. People will go to the ultra pure water dispenser, the type 1, and they will use it to fill a large volume of water. Right, and then they take that back to their workbench and use it from that container. The problem is that type 1 water does not stay type 1 for very long when it's introduced to the atmosphere, and it will contaminate very easily and reduce its quality. So I would say think about how much type 1 water you really need for what you're doing, and only dispense that amount. Then you're saving money, and you're increasing sustainability, and you're also ensuring that you have the right quality water for your work. So if you're doing tissue culture or genomics, you want to dispense the ultra pure and use it specifically for that as quickly as possible. Having water sitting in the carboys on the bench for a day or half, whatever, you have a very high chance of introducing contamination to that water. That might affect your science. Also, ensure that your water system is properly maintained. As I mentioned, we're trying to reduce cartridges being changed, but if it's telling you it needs to change the cartridges, then you need to change them, because you might be getting poor quality water out of the unit, and that could affect your experimental outcomes, causing errors, and may even require redoing work. And again, if you have to redo work, you're impacting sustainability. Also, the time and cost of redoing experiments is very costly, isn't it? So it's your time and the cost of the materials. So maintain your water system properly and change the consumables when it does tell you to do it. I would say take time to work with your supplier to ensure you properly specify the system for your application. Just because you have an old system that's a certain model, it does a certain volume of water for a reason. When that was bought 10, 15 years ago, it might have what you're using it for now might have completely changed. So take time to consult with your suppliers and to really work together. We take time to train them, and we can impart that knowledge and help you to select the right product. Because selecting the right product, again, can have a big impact on sustainability. I would also advise you to review your current inventory of water purification systems. If they're 10 years old or plus, more modern systems are run more sustainably. So older systems are inefficient and can waste time. And I know there's a question earlier for someone that they're older, they have a system that even when it's not making water, it's still going to drain. Our systems don't do that. So when they're not making water, they're not flushing drain. I don't know, there may even be a problem with something like that. But modern systems take steps to conserve water. That comes to the end of my presentation. Thank you all for listening so intently. And if there's any questions, Tamara can flag them up and we can try to answer them best we can. But once again, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, John. That was really insightful. I thought, yeah, it's really highlights that Avidity's thought through every single part and every single process that goes into their systems on a way to provide a solution that's as efficient for the customer, but also as possible, but also a solution that's is sustainable too and drives down costs in the long run as well. So it was really insightful. Thank you. I would just like to take this moment to thank you, John, for your time and your insights. I certainly learned something, and I'm hoping everyone on the call learned something and some tips and tricks to consider along the way. Next, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's joined. I appreciate your time and your attendance with joining us. If you have any further questions about water purification systems and want advice on what could be applicable for your lab, please do reach out to our sales team or myself, and we'll assist you further with your recommendations. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day further.